felt this way about my old space.
Oops. Welcome to the Healing Beyond Physical podcast. I'm your host, Omol Kiram Patravala, intuitive healer and somatic trauma therapist. And I am so honored today to welcome, I would say, a maverick in the wellness space and have a conversation around divine feminine energy, have a conversation about community and what that looks like, and really inspire you on your own healing journey of healing beyond physical. So, with that, I welcome Michelle Peris, truly a maverick in the wellness space. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you so much. I wrote down Maverick. Like, I want to remember that. Thank you. That's so lovely of you to say. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you. So, Michelle, why don't we start with just the words healing beyond physical, what that means to you in terms of how you've shifted the wellness space and the health space with just bringing in your essence and your gifts.
Yeah. Going beyond the physical was really what ended up, I guess, is what I learned as a result of everything that I was doing in the healthcare space. And then it became part of who I was as a practitioner, which absolutely changed everything for me. So I'm a naturopathic doctor. And when I graduated from school and, took everything that I had learned and was treating patients in a one-on-one capacity, I was doing what I knew, which was to focus largely on the physical. Of course, we're taught mind, body, and spirit, but
Mhm.
you're new and you're really focused on the physical
Mhm.
expression of symptoms and dis-ease of
Mhm.
your patients as they come through your door. And about 7 years into clinical practice is when I realized that I wasn't seeing the results I really desired.
Mhm.
And I just wasn't getting consistent enough results for me to be like feeling deeply satisfied. I guess there was probably some nudge, some part of
Mhm.
me that was feeling
Mhm.
dissatisfied with the work that I was doing because I just wanted it to be valuable. I really wanted to see women transform. And I didn't feel like what I was doing at that current level of awareness was enough. And
Mhm.
that really sort of birthed this pursuit into looking into group health programming. And
Mhm.
what if we put all of these like-minded women together? What would be possible
Mhm.
then?
Mhm.
How could we fix the gaps that were becoming very clear to me? The more you treat patients, the more you hear things over and over again, the more you become very aware of what's working and what isn't working with
Mhm.
respect to health and how we are currently supporting patients in the system that we exist within. And that started making me feel really uncomfortable in the best possible way,
Mhm.
agitated in the best possible way, agitated into action. And so I put together this group program, and it was a closed group for women to be
Mhm.
able to have the time, space, and breath to be able to go beyond the physical. And that's not the articulation I had at the time, but that is what
Mhm.
it is.
Mhm.
And I was so honest back then. I was like, I don't even know what I'm saying when I say divine feminine, but man, am I fascinated by her. Like, let's figure this out together.
Mhm.
But what I know I
Mhm.
can teach you is body literacy. What I know I can teach you is how to give you your power back in the healthcare
Mhm.
space. There was a growing frustration of mine being a successful clinician.
Mhm.
There's only so much time. You feel
Yes.
this, sense of need to create more time or to fit people in, and I
Mhm.
was really burning out.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
remember there being like these moments in my day-to-day life that I'd have these like giant thought bubbles above my head, and I'd be like, I need you to know all of this in order to make a meaningful change, and yet we only
So
have this
true.
much time. And so it was like this frustration. And so we created a space where all of those pieces were possible, where there was time and space and breath to empower and
Mhm.
inform. There was support. And along that, I started to become very aware of other facets of healing and
Mhm.
really becoming aware of why patients weren't getting results. And what I
Mhm.
learned is it had so little to do with them being able to adhere to an individualized plan.
Mhm.
Because if it were that simple,
Mhm.
we would have better health outcomes than we currently have. So there's something
Absolutely.
else going on there. And I think when we started to put these women together and they started to support each other and they started to dig deeper, and we really started to face more core wounds and obstacles and blocks and our stories, we realize that has nothing to do with not being able to put down the cookie. And that's just low hanging fruit. I don't mean that actually. It has so much more to do with how you feel about yourself.
Yes.
And, you know, whether or not you feel worthy of shifts and change, or if what would that change result in your life? Does it mean that people would possibly reject you and you self-sabotage in order to stay the same and not be too disruptive in your own world? And so I really ended up learning, maybe possibly more than the women. I don't know. It's maybe equal, but I learned so much in this process too. And it actually got to the point where I was like, I actually can't practice in the same capacity because I don't think I can contribute to a system that is not serving women the way I think they deserve. And it really, there was these last few conversations before I put my practice on hold, where I was like, really finding myself to dig deeper and be like, well, let's unpack this. Why do you keep sabotaging your weight loss? And it ended up resulting in a very different reason than what they thought they came in for. And they were like, Michelle, I just wanted the inositol. Like, I just wanted the supplement. Like, why are you blowing up my whole thinking? And that's when I was like, okay, we've got to find a new way to inform and empower what health really is, and do it in a safe place that doesn't terrify. And I really think group health solves all those gaps for me. I really am just so impressed, so inspired. It changed my whole perspective on what I think health and healing is. And it shifted, I think, the women that I serve to have consistent results, not only in their health, but in their life. Like they were truly able to step into their power, their full authority, and anything at that point became possible. And that to me was so exciting, because what couldn't we create after that? So I just haven't been the same. Once I knew we were going beyond the physical, once I knew that we had to dig deeper, but we had to do it in a way that was safe for everyone, that's when I got those lasting results that I really desired. And I think most people in the healthcare space feel the same way. It's like, I got into this to be of service. I wanted to make a meaningful difference. And then we end up in a model that just because everyone else is doing it that way. And we're never really questioning, like, is this working? Are these results satisfying enough? Are our patients getting what they need from this? Or are we all just accepting what is status quo and what is already being done? Because it's not easy to pitch a new idea. I have mad respect for anyone who's doing something different, because people will look at you like you have 8 eyeballs. Like, I'm sorry, you want us to do what? Like, it is an audacious ask to have women do this in this capacity. Thank goodness we're 7 years in. And I think there's a lot of inherent trust in what we're doing, because there's enough social proof and evidence of it working. But it is not easy to step outside and be like, I'm going to disrupt the medical model. I'm not going to participate in this because I don't actually think it's helping anyone. But that's not an easy thing to become aware of. It's very confronting and annoying, actually.
It must have been. I can't imagine your journey to where you are today, Michelle. I just want to, with everyone who's going to tune in, really tap into the energy that you're bringing to this conversation. That maverick is truly what this age needs. We all need to find our maverick, and have your sharing that with the world is through your community, through the wild, right? Through all the, to me, those are the present day manifestation of those wisdom circles when women gathered. And that is the manifestation of divine feminine energy coming together.
Yeah. I mean, it was so beautiful how that all happened. I'm like, what sort of download was I like so blessed to have? Because when it all came together, I'm like, I don't think I actually created this. I think so. Just channeled through me.
You did.
Totally. But I really was trying to restore. I was really trying to restore what was so inherently natural for women for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And I think we feel stripped of it. And I think, especially in North American culture, societal norms, we are really programmed with that messaging that we should be able to do it all on our own and that we shouldn't need
Mm-hmm.
to ask for help, and
Mm-hmm.
that, like that boss is able to handle it and not need to ask for help. And I think so many of us feel unhappy, dissatisfied, numb, and probably in private, outraged and
Mm-hmm.
disappointed with how it
Mm-hmm.
all looks.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just feels like such an energetic mismatch. And when we started to align women with their natural tendency, they really started to flourish and thrive. And it's just so beautiful to watch, like to witness it. I'm grateful I stuck through all of the presenting challenges to be able to witness what is possible on the other side of all of this, because these women inspire me and impress me on the daily. Like, I just am so deeply fulfilled by the work that I do and who I get to work with. Like, it doesn't feel like a job in
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
any stretch. I'm
And
very, very aligned. Like, I think and this is what I hope for every practitioner, is that the work that they do has that level of alignment.
yes, yes, the alignment with the age we're in. I'll geek out there a little bit because in the lineages that I follow, we're in this, it's called the golden age or the Aquarian age, and it is, the prophecy says that this is the age where the divine feminine is going to sort of take up its inherent space and rise. And everything that you shared was in complete alignment with, what we're starting to witness in the world. If we look around, that's what's happening. And Michelle, absolutely, you channeled that and you've manifested that into living shape form, because then the teachings also say that that means that old systems will collapse. And we need, again, mavericks who are going to lead that change, right? You said disruptor. We need that. I mean, that is needed right now to disrupt old cycles, old systems.
Mhm.
And that is part of the divine feminine energy coming through you, your embodiment of her, of that essence, if we were to see her as an archetype, and then bringing women together in community. And that's where I want to talk more with this expression of divine feminine. And now that you're embodying it, how is that showing up for you, and how is that showing up for women in their healing as they're gathering in the wild as a collective? And just even what are those core values that are being embodied by these women as they're gathering, which is then in turn supporting their healing? Because you talked about healing, it's beyond those symptoms, and I'm a definite believer of that. It's I've always seen healing as a shift of consciousness. And when you talked about women sharing their stories, reclaiming their identity, I was hearing expression of self, right? That's where the healing happens. I'm really curious for you to share more about those values and how that healing, what you're witnessing in the healing of these women, because I think that would be a great testament for all listening. And knowing that there is other ways to heal together,
Yes.
embodying that essence of divine feminine.
Most importantly. Yeah. There's so many ways I could take this, and
Yes.
and there's so many layers, but let
Yep.
me start by saying, I think what I realized is that when we started to do a couple of things, which have been really our guideposts of how we're supporting women in this capacity, and that was, our three main approaches
Mm-hmm.
to this nature of supporting women in this capacity. And so, first, we really believe in body literacy. So,
Mm-hmm.
how do we educate and empower women to be able to be the authority of her own body, to co-create her healthcare experience? I think what was a frustration
Mm-hmm.
for me in the healthcare space is that, much like my early childhood programming, I went to the doctor, I said what was going on, the doctor told me what to do, and I followed it.
Yes.
And I wasn't co-creating anything. I was just
Mm-hmm.
handing over my power. And I think many of us are used to that format, except for it often fails us because we're not even aligned. We don't even know why we're doing it. And we don't even know the inherent risks or have informed consent. And that really, as a practitioner, used to really irritate me and agitate me. And I wanted to work with women who wanted to get better and wanted to co-create that experience. And so I really wanted to help them understand how their body was meant to function, how their body speaks to them, tap into that innate intelligence. I wanted them to understand that everything that they desired and needed was already within them. I think there is this inherent conversation or undertone that we are broken. And I really wanted women to come back into trusting their bodies and speaking their truth and really understanding that they got to co-create this experience. They got to take up space in that healthcare space, and they got to put their foot down. Most women, by the time they end up in a naturopathic doctor's office, have been to so many doctors and feel very broken and not heard. And so I thought this was a beautiful opportunity to be able to do that. I think being able to go back to what is so traditionally powerful for us as women is sharing stories and hearing the normalcy of our human experience, of our collective experience. I think that was amazing because I think most of these women felt like they were on this pursuit alone, that they were all these little unicorns trying to make something happen, when they realized that there were so many other women like them out there like them. I think they felt this sense of safety and potential and potency that I think is really, really powerful in the healthcare space. I also think when we talk about trauma and childhood wounds and all of these things that can present as blocks, the opportunity of hearing other women share their story that's so similar to yours, but maybe they overcame the obstacle with a different perspective. It really can accelerate people through their trauma and see what could be. So I feel like that's a very important part in medicine. And unfortunately, the way we're trained is like, you're neutral, you're the soundboard, and that is really against our humanity. And that was always a struggle for me. So that was a really big part of it. But then understanding this sisterhood power, this community power. Someone recently asked me, like, okay, so let's say you notice that you need to go in and that you need to like work through these core wounds or this inner child work. And you're like, what if you become very aware? Because this is becoming very common vocabulary these days, right? And she was like, how do you know to go? Like, what do you do? And I'm like, well, you join a group. And she's like, I'm so surprised that you're saying that. Like, why would you go see others when you want to do this internal work? And I said to her, do you think all of a sudden we wake up one day and we just have this high impetus and motivation to do the inner work? Like, you're not going to suddenly be like, today is the day I'm going to heal my inner child. Like, it's just not how most of us think, right? If we've patterned a certain way and we've protected our stories and our truths, we're going to continue to do that unless we are exposed to something different. And so even if you've got internal work that you need to do, the safest, best place for you is in a community of like-minded people who are going to reflect back, are going to help you mirror, that are going to help you be heard, seen, and validated in your human experience. And so we know the evidence behind longevity and connection and its potential. Like, it has massive health protection. But beyond that, it really helps you to do the work that you need to be doing, and helps it become possible. So you're not all of a sudden going to wake up and be this robust, strong, divine, feminine woman when you've been living in your fractured masculine your whole life. You need a community. You need a space that's going to permit new opportunities, new pathways. And so I think what I've learned is so much about the divine feminine in this space. Watching women really start to trust and tune in and create stillness and rituals that allow them to tap in is really given me permission to do the same. Like, we're co-creating this vision of what health ought to look like. And for me, I think the evolution first was like, what is this? How does the feminine play? How is, the masculine energy, the framework in which the feminine can get creative and be safe to be self-expressed. But then also, like, how do we hold space for the shadow sides, the parts of us that are very broken, or we
Mhm.
not broken, but
The
we feel
darker or
ashamed of.
right, the ones
Yeah.
that we don't want to embrace.
Lately, that's what's really presenting for me,
Yeah.
is like, how do we make space for all aspects of ourself
Yes.
and honor and have reverence and understand that they all are allowed to have room? And
Mhm.
probably the evolution and the solution is creating boundaries in which they feel safe in order to be
Mhm.
able to do what they need to do. And so it is a continuous unfolding of wisdom, and it starts off at a very, very fundamental level of like, how do we tap into our physical symptoms and allow you to see the innate intelligence of the human
Mhm.
body?
Mhm.
And then we start to create an articulation around it. And then we start to go into mind body medicine, and we start to see how women understand how their thoughts and their feelings impact and influence their physical health, and how um, speaking our truth and setting healthy boundaries allows for them to have a lot more freedom and peace and satisfaction. Because I think really that's the goal,
Mhm.
is deep fulfillment and satisfaction.
Mhm.
And so I think like what I get to see women do, and equally myself, is that we live a life that's aligned with our core values, that is aligned with how we want to live and how we want to show up. So we've seen women, speak their truth and dissolve partnerships or friendships that no longer
Mhm.
serve them,
Mhm.
or having that moment, it has allowed for them the opportunity to strengthen and heal
Yeah.
those partnerships that were no longer working, but now are deepened because they were brave enough and courageous enough to have
Mm.
conversations that were really essential. We've
Mhm.
seen women literally reflect on their own life and realize that the job that they're doing, they don't feel fulfilled by. So how can they take their skill sets and their education and create their own way of doing things and showing up? To me, that's like, I was like, I had no idea we started a little mini entrepreneur minds mastermind, but that, I think that's what the wild
Organic.
is. The
Yes.
wild is this space to be like, if I could live in my truth, if I could
Yes.
set healthy boundaries, if I could be deeply fulfilled, what would my relationships look like? What would my health look like? What would my contribution look like? And we're literally witnessing women find their own way, pave their own way, not only in their health, but in their life. And it's really, really beautiful. And same thing, it holds me accountable. If something wasn't aligning, like my previous clinical practice, the way that I knew it to be, well, then you've got to like release what's no longer serving you, because
Mhm.
that is what that kind
Mhm.
level of integrity is, not only to yourself, but to a community that holds you to that level of self-responsibility and to your highest potential. And for me, it's like this beautiful asset. I feel like we all collectively feel like we have this part of our life that is very well nurtured. And if we need to fall back on something, if we need a perspective, we all have those friends that we've had
Mhm.
forever. And we're
Mhm.
like, I'm having this bit of a
Mhm.
struggle, and, should I do this? Yeah, you totally should do it. Even if it doesn't make sense. They're just like, they're team Michelle
Mhm.
100% of the time. And there are certain times in our life where that is not the kind of support we need. We need raw, wild, honest, loving space for us to be like, it's like a soundboard, because really
Yes.
true innate wisdom is everything that comes within. So where do we
Mhm.
have a safe space to be like, here's what's coming up for me, here's what's feeling, I'm trying to get to clarity and what decision I need to be
Mhm.
making here, and there's a community and an articulation and a connection that allows for you to have that deepened wisdom to make a decision that feels aligned to core values, which is something you did ask about. and
Mhm.
and I think that is what makes us so unique. And this is why I think we see the results, is that when we're continuously working on building health and building a life that is aligned to core values, you really can't go astray, right? You just get closer
Absolutely.
and closer to your own alignment. And it's this really beautiful um, container where we have this, safe space for women to be able to do this important work. And I'm really proud of that. Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, mhm.
Absolutely. So much. I mean, how powerful, Michelle. Thank you for sharing just even the impact that you're seeing in the lives of women, because that can be really affirming for those listening. And if there's kind of going through their journey on their own, right? When you talked about when women are like, but I want to do my inner work, and then the importance of, well, are you plugged into a hive or a community or a circle that is going to promote that? I hope that it brings that curiosity in their hearts where there's a desire to even explore and say, oh, perhaps maybe that's a layer that I need to bring in, because that is part of the divine feminine energy. Women coming together in a way that we are collaborating and co-creating. That word creation is really important in the Aquarian age. And the polarity of it is also existing. We see it. The polarity is the cancel culture. And my teacher always used to say, let's contribute to creation culture. There's both are here, but let's do our part in contributing to creation culture.
I love that.
So everything that I was hearing from you was that, that desire, so that the person coming in, she's co-creating her health, her wellness, versus someone giving her information and she's just robotically feeling like she has to execute, right? And I really want to say that over again for women listening, that this is our health, this is your health, this is your journey, this is your life, your relationships, your career. We need to find agency back in our healing. And Michelle, from everything that you said, you're creating a container for women to reclaim their agency and power. Because without that, we are actually adding to the trauma that we've lived with. We're not healing, we're actually layering on even more trauma. Because what is trauma? It's when agency is taken away and things are happening to us without our informed consent. We're not feeling safe, supported enough. And when you speak about the Wild Collective and everything that you've created, I hear just what I'm hearing is, just by virtue of being in containers like this, there's healing that's happening at a core level that folks might not even realize that is there.
Yeah.
So I do want to say that even if that's all you got was you showed up in that container, you're healing. Because if a container is going to give you back agency and you're going to have choices to be made, that is healing.
Massive.
Choices. Right? We need to have choices, and that's how the divine feminine energy is going to rise, if we find agency back in ourselves and we recognize that we are so powerful. You spoke about innate intelligence, and I use those words all the time in my sessions, and I'm like, let's tap into your innate intelligence, because it knows what to do. It orchestrates everything. We just have to create spaces for innate intelligence to be heard, to be seen, to be felt and expressed.
Yeah. And then it grows from there, right? It's just,
yes,
we've been so pulled, it's there.
Yes.
And when there's so many people who say, like, I have great relationships, why would I join? Or I didn't have a traumatic childhood. Like, why would I have to focus on this? It's like this type of domestication or pulling from our innate intelligence or our wild is subtle. It's not like big T trauma. It's like, oh, there's food left on your plate and you're like, I'm full. And your parents are like, no, you're not. And they're well-intentioned. I'm not, like, no one was out to harm anyone. But those are those little moments where your power is given away to an authority. And this builds up over time. A teacher tells you, you have to do it this way and you have to get this grade in order to succeed. And there's all these things where we're so pulled from our innate intelligence. And this is what I've really noticed, is that our highest levels, when I say to women, you have full authority to dream again. If anything was possible, what would you do? And you would think, in most cases, when someone said that to you, think about your like four-year-old self. If I said, Sadie, dream the biggest dream for me, darling, what would it be? She'd be like, we are in a mountain and Mickey Mouse is there and we're doing this. Like, she would have no problem getting there, right? You give this to a 40-year-old woman and she's like, she shrivels in fear. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? And it's like, that's actually it. That's what shows us what's broken in us, is that we're so pulled from our divine wisdom, from our capacity to take up space and dream, that we are like afraid, and we're afraid to dream. It's really fascinating to me, but that's when I'm like,
Mhm.
this is the stuff we're talking about. Is like the domestication process takes like minimum 25 years. Like it doesn't
Absolutely.
happen. It's not like one moment and we're like, you
Mhm.
have no power.
Mm-mm.
It's like little subtle messages, and we pack stories
Yes.
around it, like Untethered Soul, like Michael Singer. Like every little
Mhm.
moment is an opportunity to expose or protect, and the more that we protect the story, the more we create all of this armor. And
Yes.
this is what's so confronting about the word wild, is that most of us meet each other as our armored selves,
Mhm.
and it's like, well, why would I join that? And this is the thing that's so hard about bridging the gap, because once
Yes.
women sit in this kind of a circle, you've probably experienced this, they're like, where's this been all my life? Like, why did it
Yeah.
take me so long to say yes? And you're like, how do I tell you how amazing this is? But if you're coming to this as your armored self, and we all
Mhm.
are, zero
Mhm.
judgment, you
Mhm.
have no idea what it means to feel belongingness, or
Yes.
um, your own internal power being honored, and having a reverence
Mhm.
and this capacity to dream. And you're like literally it's the most, it feels like so wild to me that this is still something that's difficult to connect people to, but I understand why.
Yes.
But when you have a taste, you're like, I'm never leaving. And that's really what we have, is we have a community of women who are like, what's next, Michelle? Because we're not leaving. And I'm like, it's cool, because I'm not leaving
Mhm.
this either. So let's continue to co-create this experience. It's so powerful when women start to honor that. It's like that the divine feminine deserves equal
Yeah.
space
Yes.
in a world that, and that might mean doubling down on that for a bit, because we've got
Mhm.
the masculine part
Yes.
figured out,
Yeah.
because we exist in a society that celebrated that. So that part
Absolutely.
we're all pretty good at. It's about
Yes.
kind of now doubling down on, what does this feminine mean, and how does she play, and what does healthy boundaries look like for her, and how does she
Mhm.
speak? And in the Women Who Run with Wolves, I think she has the most articulate way of saying it. But if you want to learn to speak her words, if you want to know her thoughts, if you want to own that, like you need a wildish mother, you need a wildish community. Like
Yes.
that is how
Yes.
it it's not hard,
No. And
but you have to
right.
put yourself in the container that's going to instill those values,
Yes.
because otherwise you're going to be back in the old community. This is why I wasn't getting the results,
Yes.
because I was taking these women, we were one-on-one,
Yep.
they felt so hopeful in my office. They're like,
Yes.
Michelle, I can totally do this, I'm so excited. And then I would take her and I'd put her out alone in the woods, and I'd be
Yeah.
like, good luck with that. And she'd come back 6 weeks and she'd be like, oh, Michelle, I tried, but then I
Yeah.
made the meal and my husband didn't support the change, and I abandoned it because I'm terrified of being rejected. This is not what they were saying, but I know it's the narrative.
It's
It's
yeah.
actually, I don't want to cook 2 different meals, Michelle. I tried, but the supplements are so hard. No,
Mhm.
you don't feel worthy. You're afraid of making change. What if you're rejected? All of the things that, when we're in a space
Yeah.
where you're deeply supported, all of that goes away.
Melts. Yeah. And can I just say, when you touched upon the book and just the wisdom in there, that to rewild ourselves, or wild women are, can be created from a space of the wild mother. Well, I would say that most of us don't have someone to model after. Yeah, because even when you talked about your journey, you said you kind of found her along the way, right? So did I. I kind of stumbled across her along the way because I was so domesticated. And so it came from also a different lineage and a culture that was very pro domestication. Obedience is like highly valued and praised, right? So moving from sheep to being a wolf takes a lot.
It
And
does.
we've kind of stumbled across. And that's why I really believe in the power of these containers, because for women, beyond the community that they're going to get, what they're actually receiving also is watching how it's done. Because for the longest time, I would keep saying, I need to imprint this. I need to know another woman from who I can imprint this. And I've said it, I still say this, I need to feel, sense, connect with someone's energy, whether it's through a book, whether it's through, if I can't physically be there, but I need to imprint this because I don't even know what I'm trying to do here. Like that, it's so unfamiliar. And being a wild woman, when I started, was so unfamiliar because all I knew was how to be a good girl, a good wife, a good daughter. I mastered it. So to come from that one end of the continuum to another, well, you need someone to imprint it from. You need a space where that's going to be modeled and embodied, because once we surround ourselves with that, then we become that. Yeah. And the becoming happens organically versus feeling forced. Like when you're talking about these women going back out, well, they don't have someone to imprint this from. They see it for the hour and then they're gone into life.
And then they feel shame and worse off. Yes. This is my frustration with one-on-one care, is that the shame and the failure ends up, they abandon care. And you're like, we all need to stop participating in this. We all need to know that there's a smarter way. And I absolutely refuse, because another woman feeling shamed without fully understanding why she isn't able to get those results is doing more harm than good, in my opinion. And
absolutely.
I just fully believe in this possibility. And that's the thing that's so cool, is because as you're getting, like, you're around this imprint, as you are like in all the research, it's like, it's the contagion that spreads, right? Like our habits are contagious. Like we all understand that very well over the last few years. If anyone was confused about spreading anything, we're all clear. So like, how do we spread more love? And this is the thing that I think is so powerful, is that there's so much evidence to support that if you actually want a healthier, happier world, it starts with you. And by you leveling up to that and resonating at a different vibration, you will literally increase the happiness of those in your direct environment by 15%. And we've even looked at the degrees of separation. So there's, there's 6 degrees of separation. But there's 3 degrees of influence. So what does this mean? This means that if my best friend, Sarah, lives in, I don't know, let's say Ontario. So I have a high level of impact on her. And her cousin, Mary, lives in the US. And Mary's best friend, Tina, lives in Australia. By me working on myself and elevating my vibe, I influence Tina, even though she doesn't know I exist, by 6%.
Absolutely.
That's how we act. So when we're like, this is really what gets all the moms in the world. Because if we're like, I'm so worried about my kid, I want my kid to do this, work on yourself and become an embodiment, become the leader and imprint. How do we do this in an impactful way? We prioritize our own joy, our own pleasure, our own satisfaction. And that, even with partners, everyone's like, I wish my partner cared about health. Well, embody health. Embody health and impact them through example. Be the change you wish to see in the world. And this is actually happening. And now I'm watching these women start their own businesses, lead their own circles, start their own retreats, and it's spreading like wildfire. There is a science to this. It is not difficult. All you need to do is bridge the gap between the armored self, domesticated self, and the wild, and knowing that there are containers that can hold space for yourself. Because just like what you're talking about, there's a moment of madness in the divine feminine. There's a moment of where you start to set boundaries, you start to speak your truth, and it looks unhinged, it looks dangerous, it feels dangerous.
It does, to the nervous
system. And you're going to make mistakes. So if you don't have your wild sisters to be like, oh my gosh, that did not go how I thought it would. You know, and they're going to love you through that. When you learn how lovable you are, because you get to love yourself and you're in a safe container where you are loved, anything is possible. And I absolutely will stand by that. And that to me is healthcare. That is wealth care. It's actually how we change the world in the best possible way. And I feel so in my integrity with this. And thank you for having these opportunities to be able to spread this, because this message is so important. And every woman needs to know that this is not a nice to have. This is a must have.
It's an essential.
If you want to live 8 years longer, if you want better health outcomes, if you want to protect your brain, you want to actually feel satisfied, it is not difficult, but you do need to invest the energy and time into doing it. And once that happens, the rest takes care of itself. It's so much easier, but it feels so different because your armored self has come to the table. And I totally get that. And I see you and I love you and I know you'll get there.
Amen. Amen to that. As you've been speaking, I've been hallelujahing it.
I think I felt it. So
Did
then
you
my
feel it?
maverick
I'm
self.
like, hallelujah, sister, go. Preach it. Yes.
Hard to stop me. Someone asked me one question yesterday and I was like, clearly I'm an enthusiastic person. Like, I love this. I absolutely love this. And any
Yeah.
opportunity that I get to share what we're doing, because it's so
Yeah.
powerful,
Yes.
it's a gift. And I
is.
will scream from the mountaintops until every
Yes.
woman knows how worthy and how capable she is and how she can access this, because it's this important. And we have enough proof to know, I know what we have. I know what we have.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
And it would be irresponsible for me to not
Do
tell
not
every
tell everyone.
woman
Yes.
what could be if she's just so wild like myself.
Yes. To be wild again. Yes, it is time to be wild. And I want to thank you, Michelle, for that passion you bring. As you were saying that it was stirring up things in me. It's like, yes, like, yeah, you know, I'm in the process of schooling and getting my own license in psychotherapy. And I was thinking, and I've always known this, that I need to make that care accessible, but in a rewilding setting, because until then, everything is happening more from a spiritual lens. However, it's not just for those who are ready to spiritually grow. This is our innate birthright, to live in a way that we recognize that we're worthy of it all, whether it's our health, whether it's our prosperity, our wealth, our businesses, our family, our relationships. And none of them are separate from each other. That's the powerful thing, even about your container, because when you spoke about the container and what's happening there, right? Like, the shifts were happening across every area of your life. So whatever brings you into these containers, it's like, don't even limit yourself to believe that it's just going to be this one thing in my life. No, your whole life is going to change. You're going to start recognizing that you have an innate birthright to thrive versus survive life. You're going to come out, and to me, what really inspires me is our future generation, because in the Aquarian age, again, the teachings, and these teachings are deeply embedded in me. So, you know, maybe it's my own beliefs, however it serves me, is that women are the leaders of the Aquarian age. And my teacher always told me, you have two choices. You're either going to step into your leadership role as a householder, you know, if you have a family, or you're going to not do it. So we need women to step into that leadership role, because that's how we're changing. That's how we're going to go deep into this age, is through our future generation. And they need someone to imprint from and model. And that's why these containers, Michelle, when you said, you know, you have moms in there, I mean, that's so needed. We need moms recognizing and bringing that divine feminine energy of nurturing and nourishing themselves inwards, versus this broken mindset that I just need to kind of give constantly, because that in itself is a survival mechanism. Overgiving is a survival mechanism. Feeling that you have to be a martyr is a survival mechanism.
Yes.
These are blind spots.
Yeah.
And when you talked about, you know, why heal with someone, why do your inner work? Well, that's community, perhaps.
They're blind spots.
Yes, they are going to show you your blind spots. The blind
with
spots
love, you don't see them.
Yes, with acceptance and with compassion. Right.
But that's why you pick a safe container, because then they will be presented in a loving way, in the betterment of you, in the growth of you, not as a, here's what's wrong with you.
Yeah.
And that's why that is so essential. We've had women say to us, like, I have my friends, I have my family, and then I have my wild sisters. And when things are really going on in my life, I go to my wild sisters for this exactly reason, is help me see my blind spots, help me see my assets, help me mirror back what I'm thinking, so I can know my truth and know what's best for me. And that is a beautiful, rare gift. And if anyone's listening to this, both you and I are clearly very enthusiastic about this topic. It's like, if you feel so far from your wild, you feel so far from this potential, What's the risk?
Yeah.
What is the risk? And this is the thing that we really need to start confronting in ourselves. There
Love
were
that.
many women who said to me, like, I was so excited at the possibility, because we have women come and share their stories, because I think it's important that they hear her words, not mine,
Yes.
hers. And they'd be like, it's so great that that worked for them. I don't know if it could work for me, but what do I have to lose at this point? I'm here in this moment. I may as well say yes. What's the worst? And now these women are like blowing up the world in their own respective
Powerful.
fields. And you're like,
Yes.
what's the worst that could happen? And we really need to ask ourselves, the quality of our life is based on the quality of questions that we ask. And if we are not asking better questions, we're going to get stuck in a rut, and we're not going to see our blind
Looping.
spots, that we're going to keep looping.
Yes, yes.
And I really think if we actually asked ourselves, like, what do we really want from this? Like, whatever the situation is, like, what are we hoping the outcome is? Like, ask better questions. And it would probably lead you to quite innate intelligence of being like, why am I doing this? And I think that's what ends up becoming the inconvenient truth for these women, is they're like, I can no longer keep going in this relationship or this work, because it's so out of my integrity, and I have to find my own way. And I'm willing to be brave enough to go into the unknown, because that feels more aligned than staying stuck.
Yeah. Yes.
And if you're feeling a little terrified, I want you to know that this happens in baby steps. This is not like tomorrow you're
Absolutely.
like,
Oh my goodness.
burn the ships.
No.
Not. It's like,
yeah.
It's graceful.
Absolutely.
And it's totally in honor of your own journey. There's no pressure to ever do anything that's out of your own alignment or your readiness level. But this is essential and meaningful work for women. And I know when we have access to this, we take on her values, we speak her words, and we become our own leader. And we have this really inherent trust in ourselves, and know we won't be led astray anymore. And that's a really beautiful thing. And just like how a toddler has to learn to walk and they're all over the place and they're falling, you need a safe container to have someone catch you and like get you back up so that you try again.
Exactly.
Because you're not likely to just white
No.
knuckle it on your own.
No,
Otherwise you'd be
no.
doing it.
Yeah.
It's just that simple.
Speaking of the toddler, I might be facetious here, but just to say that in sessions, and we know this through trauma research, is that, well, we're all working with these young parts of ourselves, right? In life, when we show up, when you can't say no to someone, when you choose to, work your butt off and burn yourself out, there is this young part of you who is actually expressing herself through you in that moment. You don't have access to the wild, wise woman who would have felt safe enough to say no.
That's right.
Enough. So it's time for us to truly embrace all those parts and integrate them. Otherwise,
I heard
we
it
are
mirrored
like
in a
toddlers.
beautiful way. Yeah, we are. And like, I heard it said a beautiful way on the weekend. And it's like, what GPS are you allowing to drive? Is it the GPS of your inner wounded child, where you're afraid to be rejected, where you're afraid to be seen? Or is the GPS your highest self that's actually done a lot? You have a lot of proof of her being an incredible being. But when left unchecked, we usually default back into our wounded self. And that GPS is actually what's driving your decision making.
And then you are looping for for a long time, whatever that path is, right?
Yeah,
that loop, the endless loop. Oh goodness. Yeah, it's time. I just have to say it's time. And we owe it to ourselves, and we owe it to our future generation as well. Sometimes it's sad, but I have to tell women, if you're so motivated by your children, then you're going to say yes to this, because at least model and imprint it for them.
Exactly.
Let's just start there. And then you'll come to your own conclusions as to why you matter. But let's just start somewhere. Let's get into this. So whether it is a health challenge, what I hope listeners are taking in is whatever challenge you're moving through life right now, and wherever you're looping and where you're stuck, there is a way out. It is in community. It is in a safe, sacred space where there are other like-minded folks like you who are also saying yes to be walking that path of discomfort and are curious about where that might lead them.
And
So
what if it could be more beautiful than you possibly imagined,
yes,
but you can't see it?
but you can't see it yet. So you just have to bring that some level of curiosity into the process.
Totally.
That is healing, curiosity. And that's what I invite today to our listeners. Like, please be curious when you tune into the energy of what is being shared, because it is time. We do need to we all need to get together and rise together. The rise is in collaboration, in community. It wasn't like each woman by herself doing her thing. Like, that is not the divine feminine essence. So we do need to come together.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
need to find your safe spaces. With that, one more thing, Michelle. You talked about shadow and how the shadows are showing up in circle. And that's very close to my heart, that work, because I see trauma healing through that lens of, what one might call shadow work. However, more from the Buddhist philosophy of Maitri. And Maitri means to create friendship with yourself.
Mm.
So in my practice, I quite often use the words, when you see this part of yourself, really she's adaptive, she's protective, and she's the one who's like, oh my God, I can't say no to this person. She's first of all taken over. And how we're going to move forward is by establishing Maitri, which is befriending her. And before you even befriend her, you're going to tend to her.
Mm-hmm.
Because friendship doesn't just happen like, hey, let's be friends and now you trust me and now I've got your back. No, there's a relationship here. So first you got to tend to her, because she probably, in my case, I'm like, so many times I tell folks, I'm like 46 years. So there are many parts of me who are still waiting for 46 years to be tended to. So first I have to just tend to them. And that's where that divine feminine energy is so powerful. And that's how I see it playing into the work that I do, because that is self-nurturing. That is self-compassion. Tending to your part of yourself that is saying no, is not okay saying no to that person, not okay creating a boundary, because she's an adaptive protective part. Or that part of yourself who's like, run, there's a tiger, who makes you hypervigilant and think like everyone's out there to sabotage you. Or that voice that you call your inner critic. She's actually an adaptive protective part of yourself. What if we stopped hating her? What if we start doing, we stopped doing that and we just got curious and said, what if this is about Maitri, this journey of wholeness? And I just tend to her, just sit with her and be like, how do I feel? And for me, it's in the body, how is she speaking? How is she communicating? I hear you. I feel you. The very things that you're going to model in circle, then we bring them inwards to befriend these parts that we call shadow. Because that feels magical. Women have said that. This felt magical. I'm like, this is not magical. This is you befriending and integrating this young part who was waiting for years to be heard and to be seen. And I feel that the circle mirrors that. Because when whatever version of yourself is showing up in circle and she's seen, heard, felt, there's an imprint you've received, and now you can bring that imprint inwards.
Yeah, this is landing for me at a very deep level, because I almost feel like the first part of my journey was the self-discovery, the self-awareness of the divine feminine. And then to be ready to have enough level of self-trust, integrity, self-love, self-compassion, so that when the shadow side shows up, and she will, and if your messaging your whole life was for me, as I'm going through this literally in live time, you realize that the messaging has been that you transform, or you turn that into the good person. It's you're not befriending her, you're making her into something, you're forcing her, you're
pressuring her,
suppressing or not letting her have a seat at the table. And I think what I'm learning in live time and having massive compassion for this journey is is the befriending part.
Yes.
Is what happens when you have such self-compassion, such self-love for the woman, that you are now brave enough to befriend the parts of yourself that you've maybe felt ashamed about your whole life, and make room for her, and realize that maybe boundaries weren't upheld properly, or you didn't feel like you were speaking your truth, and those parts of yourself were just doing what they'd always done, which is to protect. And it's just really beautiful to even see my own evolution come to the place of like such massive love and self-compassion, to be like, I'm going to love her through that too.
Yes.
I'm going to be first aware,
yes,
and sit with that, and then befriend her, and not trying to make her go away, but
no,
understand that all parts have the right to be seen and nourished and nurtured, and that there are no bad parts.
no, they helped you survive a time of life that you wouldn't have survived without them. So
That's right. That's right.
As soon as we see it that way, at some point there's going to be compassion. Or perhaps we start with just a friendly curiosity, because everyone's entry point is going to look different, because some of these parts have also kind of kept us in endless loops where, you know, perhaps there is this voice that is so angry. And even that voice that is angry is a protective part. That's not your wise woman.
I think that's what's so interesting about this work. I think I needed 7 years of like falling in love with myself.
Yes.
To be able to be brave enough to confront the shadow sides that weren't allowed room, right? I had to pretend that she wasn't there, right? She wasn't, because there was so much shame around that. Then you come to a place where I mean, it, like, use myself as an example, as the leader of the wild. It's like, that's not where I started at all. But once I came to a level of massive self-compassion, she was allowed to show up so that I could start to heal those parts of myself. That's, I think, this duality and polarity and this beauty of life, is that that's always there. There's always parts, there's always work.
Yes, yes. Always, always. And it's not a race. They don't have timelines in terms of how long they take to be integrated.
No, and it's not always.
There's no timeline. It's not linear. And might I even say that perhaps you've seen this in your practice, is that sometimes they show up very audaciously with heart-like sensations that are very uncomfortable. Sometimes that part is communicating with you through pain that you've had, like, for this, as long as you can remember, this migraine that you've had for as long as you can remember, or that shoulder or that low back ache, pain, etc. That is a part communicating so desperately that she's just getting louder year after year, waiting that perhaps you'll open the door.
As wisdom does. You don't want the whisper? Here's the brick wall, because I love you.
Yes.
And in a world that suppresses pain at all costs, it's a very terrifying thing to do alone. And that's what provides the conundrum of like wanting the quick fix or the pill in order to fix. And there is no such thing. There's no white knight. There is no magic pill.
No
one's coming to rescue you.
Nope.
And so you need a space to start doing the work that really matters, so that you can level up and live an aligned life, because you deserve it, because it is your birthright. That is why.
Yes.
That is why, because the pain of staying the same is actually more uncomfortable than the pain of change. And that is the moment where the rubber meets the road and you go, okay, I'm all in. I'm going to be all about me for a little bit. And I'm just going to see what happens. What if I was just curious to try?
Yeah. Just curious.
What would be possible then?
Yeah. Yeah.
Really beautiful. That potency, that moment is a really beautiful moment in a woman's life.
Absolutely. Yeah. That is the moment of pivot. And that's the moment of possibilities. And we're all worthy of possibilities. We're all worthy of living a life out of survival into states of thriving, into places of co-creating, to places of love, compassion. And those are not just esoteric places that we can hold as abstract concepts. They're to be embodied.
That's right.
And the embodiment is going to be this process. that's going to have the duality of, oh my God, this feels like I'm literally choking as I'm trying to tend to this part. And at the same time, as soon as I sit with her and I listen and I befriend, there's freedom on the other side. And that is the truth.
Perfect. It's like, I mean, and that is the truth.
That is the truth. I mean, if we're looking for freedom, it's waiting to be found.
That's, I just wish, and I wasn't taught this either, right? But if we all knew that all these universal laws were our birthright, that everyone has access to this potential, if we rise to the occasion, that's a way different way of thinking. Here we are just shooting ourselves in our martyr or possible victim consciousness, like they have something that I don't have. That is a lie that we were fed. That's absolutely untrue. There is nothing unique or special about me, and I love myself. But what I mean and what I need to be heard is that we all have access to this potential.
Absolutely.
And I'm seeing it in my direct community, and I know it to be true because I read enough about this to know in my heart that we are on to something, and rising to a new way of creating a new earth is so exciting to me. A new level of awareness and consciousness is so exciting because now we can actually understand and have deep reverence that this is something we all have access to, should we maintain a healthy curiosity to just dip our toe in.
Yeah.
That's all we're asking for. Just
start
dip your
there.
toe in.
Just start there.
Just start there. That's all we need, quite frankly. Because if I told you, everything else, it might scare you too much. So just dip the toe in.
Just dip the toe in. Come in and just have a good time, even if
it's fun. Maybe just laugh.
Yeah, just laugh.
Learn about your thyroid and metabolic health. Whatever you need to hear, you do you. We don't care. Just dip your toe in.
Whatever your entry point is, you're welcome, is what I'm hearing, Michelle.
1,000%.
Yeah, you're welcome
1,000%.
just the way you are.
There's no wrong way to enter.
No, there is no wrong way. There is no levels. This is not the traditional structures of like, oh, you must pass grade 1 to get into grade 2, and then you must get this X amount of grades to get to that. That structure is gone with the Piscean age. It doesn't serve us. So this is come as you are. And there is no hierarchy because you're all creators, right? That's the power
of massive humility.
Yes.
So you get mirrored, like you get to feel. I think for me, what I've learned over the years, like I just want to feel.
Yes.
I want to feel sadness when sadness is presented.
Yes.
I want to feel true joy when true joy is presented. I want to feel grief and make space for grief. And when we are brave enough to be like, I can handle it all. Guess what? You will.
Colorful.
It's beautiful.
And
life
rich.
Is colorful. That's
and vibrant. And juicy.
And that's what we're looking for. And I'm a frustration for all of my colleagues who run Wild Collective. They're like, who do we serve? But you've literally just put it. It's if we want to go from black and white, linear, like dulled out to colorful, rich, delicious, romantic living. That's what we're doing in the wild. And it's the most beautiful thing. And there is no wrong or right way to do it. There really isn't. No. That's the beauty of it. That's the humanity of it. And those results are there for those who are curious. And it's just that simple.
Just that simple. So Michelle, I would love for you to share a little more about how folks can join this. I think we've kind of kept them in this like very curious space. So it's time to divulge and let them know. What is she talking about? This magical, enchanting place. No, it exists. It's real. And Michelle's going to tell you more about it. How can women now start experiencing more colors in their life, Michelle? How can they do that? Where would they find this?
Thanks for the opportunity. So the best place to find me and connect with me personally is on Instagram at Dr. Michelle Peris. We have Wild Collective on Instagram as well. We also have a beautiful website that you can learn more about the Wild Collective, and it's www.the-wild-collective.com. And we are a global mission. We have Wild Collective circles all over the world and virtually. So no woman is left alone. should she want to be a part of such an incredible sisterhood. Our clinic has a hybrid model, so it's really, really cool. We've been able to leverage tech and maintain this sacredness of the circle. And I'm really proud of that, because I want every woman to have access should they desire it. We are a 10 module program, and we teach women about their body. And we also have a lot of conversations. It's closed group on purpose, because I want them the time and space to build those connections so they have that sisterhood for life. That was really a core value for me. And if you want to learn more about us, it's really easy. And you can tell, you can get an enthusiastic Michelle any day of the week if I'm talking about the wild. So just find us there. And I can always point you to a local circle, or you can always join ours should there not be a local one near you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
Absolutely.
And allowing the colorfulness of this conversation.
Yes, to have an expression. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right.
Hallelujah to everything that was said here. And like always, for those who are tuning in, always taking in these conversations through your lens, through lens of curiosity and through your own lens of innate wisdom, taking in what is serving you and sort of putting aside on the bookshelf what maybe is not ready to arrive yet. Yeah, and it can also be a wonderful opportunity to get curious. If there was anything that Michelle or myself said that you noticed that your body got tight, tense, triggered, then those are wonderful journaling moments. Those could be your blind spots. So sit with those, maybe even just capture them, so that one day when you're in a circle that, such as the wild, you have time to explore. You have time to lean into these places that feel dark right now. And with that, please know that you're not alone. And I'm just so grateful for you to be here, connecting your heart with our hearts. And that's Bella. She's also connecting. And with that, so much love to everyone. Please like, love, share. Sharing is caring. So if this resonates, please share this with at least one other woman in your life who needs to know that thriving is her birthright, that freedom is her birthright. Please do. So much love. Until next week. Bye for now.